Sometimes the road to freedom is the one you never planned to take. And on a cold winter night, with snow falling like a silent warning, Sophia Lancaster found herself on that very road, running, searching, unaware that destiny had just placed her in the path of the one man who could change everything. Now let's dive into the story. And if you enjoy gripping tales of love, resilience, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe for more. Poor mechanic rescues a mysterious girl. Unaware she's a billionaire, testing his kindness for a fortune. Sophia Lancaster gripped the steering wheel tighter as snowflakes battered her windshield, swirling in chaotic patterns under the car's headlights. The blizzard had arrived faster than expected, turning the winding country road into a treacherous path of ice and uncertainty. She had never driven in conditions like this before, never needed to. Her life had been one of chauffeurs and luxury, where winter storms were merely an aesthetic backdrop seen through the windows of a penthouse suite. But tonight was different. Tonight she was running. The echoes of the engagement party still clung to her like a phantom. The clinking of champagne glasses, the forced smiles, the weight of expectations heavy on her shoulders. Her father's voice rang in her ears. "This is the right choice for the family, Sophia. You will marry Ethan." A choice that had never been hers. Her heart pounded. She had to keep moving, had to put distance between herself and the life that felt more like a prison than a privilege. Her fingers, wrapped in thin designer gloves, trembled against the cold. She hadn't planned this escape well. The suitcase, in her trunk, contained a few hastily packed clothes and her phone, now useless with no signal in this remote part of the state. A gust of wind hit her car, making the tires slip. She gasped, instinctively jerking the wheel, but it was a mistake. The tires lost grip entirely, and the car spun violently, black ice. Panic surged through her veins as the vehicle skidded, spinning like a leaf in a storm. The headlights swung wildly, illuminating trees, ditches, and then nothing. A sickening lurch, a sudden weightlessness, and then impact. The car plunged into a snowbank, the engine sputtering before falling silent. For a long moment, all Sophia could hear was the sound of her own breathing, shallow, panicked. She tried to restart the car, but the engine groaned, clicking lifelessly. Her heart sank. She was stranded, alone, in the middle of a snowstorm. She reached for her phone. No service. Her breath fogged the air as she realized just how dire her situation was. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and her thin coat was no match for the brutal cold. She couldn't stay in the car forever, but stepping out into the storm seemed equally dangerous. Then, faintly, through the thick curtain of falling snow, headlights appeared in the distance. Her pulse quickened. Relief mixed with wariness. Was this her salvation, or something worse? She had spent her entire life shielded from danger, but she wasn't. Naive. A lone woman stranded on an empty road could be an easy target. The truck rolled to a slow stop a few feet from her car, its tires crunching over the fresh snow. The driver's door swung open, and a figure stepped out. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, wrapped in a heavy work jacket and worn jeans. His boots left deep imprints in the snow as he approached. "Hey!" he called out over the wind. "You okay?" Sophia hesitated before lowering her window just enough to speak. "My car. It won't start. I hit a patch of ice." The man crouched slightly to get a better look at her. His face, partially shadowed under the brim of his beanie, was rough but not unkind. He exhaled a visible breath before nodding toward her car. "Engines probably flooded. Can't do much out here in this cold." She swallowed, unsure what to say. "I've got a tow hitch on my truck," he continued. "I can pull you out and take you into town." Town? She had no idea where she even was. "Where exactly is town?" she asked cautiously. "Couple miles. Up the road." Only place open this late is the diner, and after that, well," he shrugged, "not much else till morning." Sophia glanced down at her phone. Still no signal. Staying in the car wasn't an option. Neither was walking through. A blizzard. He seemed to sense her hesitation. "Look, I get it," he said, voice steady but patient. "I wouldn't trust a stranger either, but it's either come with me or freeze out here." She exhaled, watching the frost curl from her lips. "Okay." The man nodded and walked back. To his truck. A few minutes later, she felt the subtle jerk of her car being pulled from the snowbank. Once free, she stepped out, the wind immediately cutting through her expensive but useless coat. The cold stole her breath, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around herself. The man, without a word, shrugged off his thick flannel jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like pine and motor oil, rough against her skin but warm. "Come on," he said, guiding her toward the passenger seat of his truck. "Let's get you somewhere warm." As she climbed in, her fingers brushing against the worn fabric of the seat, she found herself stealing a glance at the man beside her. He was nothing like the polished, tailored men she had grown up around. There was something about him, unrefined, rugged yet steady. She didn't even know his name. He pulled the truck onto the road, the headlights carving a path through the storm. Silence settled between them, save for the low hum of the heater and the occasional rattle of the dashboard. "Thank you," she murmured after a while. He glanced at her, then back at the road. "Name's Nathan." She hesitated before answering. Sophia Lancaster was dead, at least for now. She needed a name that wouldn't raise suspicion, a name that wouldn't lead anyone back to her. She took a quiet breath. "Emma," she said finally. "My name is Emma." Nathan didn't question it. He just nodded, eyes focused on the snowy road ahead. As they drove into the night, Sophia, now Emma, couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into a world far removed from her own. And for the first time in her life, she didn't know what would happen next. The ride into town was quiet, save for the steady hum of the truck's engine and the rhythmic swishing of the windshield wipers against the falling snow. Sophia, Emma, she reminded herself, stole occasional glances at the man beside her. Nathan Williams. Even in the dim glow of the dashboard, she could see the sharp angles of his jawline, the roughness of his stubble, and the way his hands gripped the steering wheel. Strong, calloused hands that belonged to a man accustomed to hard work, not like the men she had known, men in tailored suits with perfectly manicured nails, who flashed practiced smiles at gala events and spoke in carefully measured words, where every sentence was a calculated move in a grander game of wealth and power. Nathan didn't seem like the type to play games. She tightened the borrowed flannel jacket around herself, inhaling its scent, pine, motor oil, and something warm, something distinctly human. "How long were you out there before I found you?" Nathan's voice cut through the silence, deep and steady. She hesitated. She had to be careful. The less she revealed, the safer she was. "Not long," she replied, watching as her breath fogged the air. "Maybe 15, 20 minutes? Nathan shot her a skeptical glance. "You didn't have much time left." A lump formed in her throat. She knew that. The cold had been creeping into her bones, numbing her fingers and toes. If he hadn't come along when he did, she didn't want to think about it. "You're lucky," he continued, his eyes still on the road. "Storm's bad tonight. Not many folks out this way. You could have been stuck there till morning." "Yeah," she murmured. "Lucky." It wasn't luck, though. It was desperation. The road stretched before them, winding through a landscape blanketed in white. The town soon emerged from the darkness, a scattering of warm, glowing lights in the midst of the storm. It was small, nothing like the towering city skyline she was used to, but there was something comforting about it. Nathan pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, its neon sign flickering against the snow. Inside, a handful of late-night, Patrons nursed steaming mugs of coffee, their faces weathered with the kind of stories Sophia had never heard firsthand. He killed the engine and turned to her. "This is pretty much the only place open this time of night. You can get something warm to eat while I figure out what to do with your car." Sophia nodded, gripping the handle to step out. But before she could, Nathan reached behind the seat and pulled out an old wool beanie. "Here," he handed it to her without fanfare. "You look like you need it." She hesitated before taking it, the fabric rough but warm against her fingers. No one had ever given her something like this before, something practical, something necessary, something given without expectation. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathan just nodded and pushed open his door, stepping into the storm like the cold didn't even bother him. Inside the diner, the warmth hit her instantly, chasing the chill from her skin. The smell of fresh coffee, bacon, and something sweet, maybe cinnamon, filled the air. It was simple, homey, utterly unlike the high-end restaurants where waiters hovered with silent precision, anticipating her every move before she even made. Nathan led her to a booth by the window and slid into the seat across from her. A waitress, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a name tag that read Marge, approached with a knowing smile. "Well, well, Nathan Williams, out in this storm," she teased, pulling a pen from behind her ear. "Ain't like you to bring a date to my diner." Sophia's cheeks burned. Nathan only shook his head. "She's not a date, Marge. Found her stranded outside town. Car's dead." Marge's eyes softened as she turned to Sophia. "That's no good, honey. You must be frozen half to death. What can I get you?" Sophia glanced at the menu, but didn't recognize half of it. She was used to gourmet meals with ingredients she couldn't pronounce, plated like art, more presentation than sustenance. "Here, everything sounded real." She cleared her throat. Coffee, and maybe pancakes." Marge grinned. "Good choice. Best pancakes this side of the state." She scribbled the order down and turned to Nathan. "You. Same as usual." Nathan nodded. Black coffee and the special. Sophia watched as Marge disappeared behind the counter. "You come here a lot?" "Small town," he said simply. "Not a lot of places to go." She sipped her water, watching him. "So, you're a mechanic?" "Yeah." He leaned back in the booth, stretching one arm over the backrest. "Been fixing cars since I was a teenager. Opened my own shop a few years back." She absorbed that. "A man who built something for himself. What about you?" Nathan asked, studying her with those sharp blue eyes. "Where were you headed before you got stuck?" Sophia's heart stuttered. She had been so careful. But of course, he would ask. Any normal person would. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Just needed to get away for a bit. Nathan didn't press. He just nodded, like he understood. And for some reason, that scared her more than anything. The pancakes were soft and fluffy, better than anything she'd ever had at a five-star restaurant. She ate hungrily, not realizing just how cold and exhausted she'd been until now. Nathan, meanwhile, worked through his meal quietly, occasionally glancing out the window at the storm. After a while, he set his fork down. "You got a place to stay?" Sophia hesitated. She couldn't check into a hotel, not without risking someone recognizing her name. And she had no idea where she even was. She swallowed. "Not yet." Nathan studied her for a long moment, then exhaled. "Storm's getting worse. I've got an extra room at my place." Her heart thumped. I'll sleep on the couch," he added, like he could already hear the protest forming in her mind. "Door locks from the inside. You'll be safe." Safe. She had never felt unsafe before tonight, but now that the word was spoken, she realized just how much she had taken it for granted. Nathan wasn't looking at her like he was expecting something in return. Just offering her a place to get out of the cold. No agenda, no expectations, and maybe, just maybe, that was what made him dangerous. Because the world she came from had taught her that no one does something for nothing. But sitting across from Nathan Williams in a small-town diner, wearing his borrowed jacket and eating pancakes that melted in her mouth. She wondered if, for the first time, she had met someone different. The ride from the diner to Nathan's house was short, but felt longer in the silence between them. The snowstorm had worsened, blanketing the small town in white, turning the streets into a quiet, frozen world. The truck's headlights carved a path through the darkness, illuminating the swirling flakes that never seemed to settle. Emma, she reminded herself again, kept her hands folded in her lap. The wool beanie Nathan had given her pulled snug over her head. It wasn't just the cold outside that made her shiver. It was the uncertainty. She was about to spend the night in a stranger's home, a man's home. It wasn't like she had a choice. She couldn't check into a hotel. She had no money, no plan, no idea where she even was. Nathan was her best, maybe, only option. Still, it unnerved her how easily he had offered. People didn't do things for free, not in her world, not without expecting something in return. She cast a sideways glance at Nathan. He looked completely at ease, one hand on the steering wheel, the other adjusting the heat controls. No tension, no ulterior motives. That more than anything was what made him dangerous. When they pulled into the driveway, her breath caught. She had expected, what? A dingy bachelor pad? A cluttered, oil-stained garage with a mattress thrown somewhere in. The back? Instead, Nathan's house was a modest but well-kept cabin-style home, nestled against a line of tall pines. The roof was layered in fresh snow, and warm light spilled from the windows, inviting, lived in. A small front porch, a stack of chopped firewood neatly arranged to the side. It was simple, but it felt safe. Nathan put the truck in park and turned to her. "Welcome to my humble castle," she blinked, caught off guard by the humor in his voice. He wasn't nervous. She was. The wind howled as she stepped out of the truck, and almost instantly she felt the bite of the cold. Nathan, as if reading her discomfort, walked ahead and unlocked the front door, stepping aside so she could enter first. The warmth inside was immediate. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows across wood-paneled walls lined with books and small trinkets. The living room had a worn-out but comfortable-looking couch, a coffee table stacked with car magazines, and a framed photograph of an older couple on the mantel. "Your parents?" she asked before she could stop herself, nodding toward the photo. Nathan's gaze flicked to the picture, his expression unreadable. "Yeah." She didn't push. Instead, she let her eyes roam the space. Everything here felt real. Not staged, not polished for appearances, not designed to impress. It was lived in, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile elegance she had grown up with. Nathan dropped his keys onto a nearby table. "I'll show you to the guest room." The room was small but cozy, a neatly made bed with a patchwork quilt, a wooden dresser, and a window that overlooked the snowy trees outside. "There's an extra blanket in the closet if you need it," Nathan said, leaning against the doorframe. "Bathrooms down the hall. If you get hungry, kitchen's open. I won't let you starve." His tone was light, but she could sense the unspoken reassurance in his words. He wasn't going to hover, he wasn't going to pry, and for some reason, that made her trust him just a little more. Sophia shifted, pulling the borrowed jacket tighter around herself. "Nathan?" He raised an eyebrow. She hesitated. The words felt foreign on her tongue. "Thank you." Nathan studied her for a moment, before nodding. "Get some rest, Emma." And just like that, he left her alone. The room was quiet, almost too quiet. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at her trembling hands. What was she doing here? She had spent her entire life in luxury hotels, marble-floored penthouses, grand estates with towering gates that kept the world at bay. Now she was in a mechanic's home, wearing a stranger's jacket, eating diner pancakes, pretending to be someone she wasn't. But wasn't that exactly what she wanted? To be unknown. To be free. She exhaled slowly, lying back against the bed, staring up at the ceiling. The storm outside raged on, wind rattling against the window pane. But for the first time in a long time, she felt still. Nathan sat in the living room, staring into the fireplace. Something about Emma didn't add up. Her clothes, her hesitation, the way she seemed both lost and terrified of being found. She wasn't just some girl passing through town, but he wasn't going to push. If she had secrets, they were hers to tell. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Maybe he was being stupid, letting a stranger into his home. Maybe she was running from something, someone. But when he looked at her, really looked, he didn't see danger. He saw a woman on the edge of something, uncertain but desperate to hold on. And for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he wanted to make sure she didn't fall. The first thing Sophia noticed when she woke up was the silence. No distant hum of traffic, no ringing phones, no muffled conversations from behind closed doors, no city noise at all. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back. The snowstorm, the stranded car, Nathan, his home. She sat up slowly, the patchwork quilt pooling around her waist. The air in the room was cool, but not uncomfortably so, and the faint scent of coffee and something warm, something familiar, drifted in from the hallway. Her stomach grumbled. She couldn't remember the last time she'd woken up feeling hungry. Most mornings in her old life had been a blur, waking up to a rigid schedule, skipping breakfast in favor of back-to-back meetings or social obligations. Food had been an afterthought, something plated beautifully but barely touched, eaten for show rather than nourishment. This was different. She was actually hungry. She hesitated before getting out of bed, grabbing the flannel jacket Nathan had lent her and pulling it tightly around her shoulders. It was too big, the sleeves hanging past her wrists, but it was warm, and more importantly, it smelled safe. She stepped out into the hallway, following the scent of coffee to the kitchen. Nathan stood at the stove, pancakes sizzling on a cast-iron skillet. Sophia hesitated in the doorway, watching him move. He was comfortable in his space, relaxed but efficient, flipping pancakes with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times before. A coffee mug sat on the counter beside him, steam curling from its surface. He looked up as he sensed her presence. "Mornin'." His voice was low, still rough from sleep. She cleared her throat. "Morning." Nathan gestured toward the coffee pot. "Help yourself." Sophia hesitated before stepping forward, reaching for a mug. She poured herself a cup, wrapping her hands around the warmth of it. This was strange. No staff, no formal dining table, no one waiting to serve her. Just her, and him, and breakfast. "Did you sleep okay?" Nathan asked, sliding a stack of pancakes onto a plate. She nodded, taking a small sip of coffee. "Better than I expected." His lips quirked. "You expected not to?" "I don't usually sleep well in unfamiliar places." Nathan didn't comment on that, just reached into a cabinet and grabbed a second plate, setting it on the counter beside her. She looked down at the pancakes. Golden brown, slightly uneven, imperfect, but real. Nathan handed her a fork. "You eat pancakes, don't you?" She let out a soft laugh, surprising even herself. When was the last time she had laughed? "Yes," she admitted, "I eat pancakes." They ate in a comfortable silence, the only sound the occasional clink of forks against plates. Sophia found herself actually enjoying the meal, something she hadn't done in a long time. There was no pressure to make conversation, no expectation to impress. It was just breakfast. Nathan finished first, leaning back in his chair and studying her with quiet curiosity. "So, Emma," she tensed. "What's next for you?" She swallowed a bite too quickly, setting her fork down. What do you mean? He shrugged. You said you were just passing through. That's still the plan. Sophia hesitated. She hadn't thought that far ahead. She had left her old life behind, with no real plan, just the burning need to get away. Now that she was here, safe for the moment, the weight of uncertainty settled heavily on her shoulders. She could feel Nathan watching her, waiting. I don't know yet, she admitted finally. Nathan nodded like he wasn't surprised. Well, if you need a place to stay while you figure it out, you're welcome here for now. Her eyes snapped to his. She had expected him to tell her she needed to move on soon, that this was just a temporary kindness. But he was offering her more. Why? She asked cautiously. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Why what? Why are you helping me? Nathan held her gaze for a long moment, then leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. Because I've been where you are, he said simply. Sophia frowned. What do you mean? Nathan exhaled slowly. I know what it's like to have nowhere to go, to feel like you're running from something, but not knowing where you're running to. Sophia's breath hitched. She had assumed Nathan had always belonged here, that his life had always been steady, grounded. But there was something in his voice, something in the way he looked at her, that suggested he understood far more than she had realized. Before she could ask more, Nathan stood, grabbing his empty plate. I've got work to do at the shop today, he said casually. You're welcome to come by if you get bored. She blinked. The shop? My garage, he smirked. Where I fix cars for a living. Oh, right. Nathan paused before heading to the sink. I'll be back later, this afternoon. If you need anything, there's a spare key by the door. Sophia nodded slowly. Nathan gave her one last look before grabbing his jacket and heading out the door. The house felt quieter without him in it. For the first time in a long time, Sophia had nothing to do. No meetings, no phone calls, no expectations. She wandered through the house, running her fingers over the bookshelf in the living room, glancing at the framed pictures on the walls. Most of them were old, black-and-white photos of people she didn't recognize. She wondered what Nathan's story was, where he had come from, what he had meant when he said he had been where she was. A part of her wanted to ask. A bigger part of her wasn't sure if she wanted to know, because if Nathan had his own past, his own ghosts, then maybe she wasn't the only one keeping secrets, and that scared her more than anything. The hours passed slower than Sophia expected. She had never been left alone like this before. In her old life, there had always been someone nearby, assistants, security, maids, drivers. Even when she had been by herself, she had never truly been alone. But here, in Nathan's quiet cabin, she felt a strange sense of solitude. Not lonely, exactly, just still. She spent the morning flipping through a book she had pulled from Nathan's shelf. An old, well-worn novel with creased pages and a broken spine. She read a few chapters before giving up, her thoughts too tangled to focus on the words. By noon, she found herself pacing. She needed to do something, anything, to distract herself from the reality of her situation. From the fact that for the first time in her life, she had no plan. Nathan had said she could stop by the garage. The thought made her hesitate. She had never stepped foot inside an auto shop before. She had never needed to. The cars in her world had always been maintained by unseen hands, fixed before problems even arose. The idea of a grease-streaked garage, the smell of oil and metal, the sound of tools clanking against steel. It was so far from the world she knew, and maybe that was exactly what she needed. The snow had slowed by the time Sophia made her way into town, borrowing one of Nathan's heavier coats to shield herself from the cold. His garage was easy to spot, a large metal-roofed building with a faded sign reading Williams Auto Repair above the entrance. She hesitated before stepping inside, blinking against the sudden warmth and noise. The scent of motor oil, gasoline, and something distinctly mechanical filled the air. A radio played low in the background, competing with the sound of tools at work. Nathan was at the far end of the shop, sleeves rolled up, grease smeared along his forearm as he worked beneath the hood of an old pickup truck. He hadn't noticed her yet. Sophia found herself watching him. He was focused, methodical, his movements precise as he tightened a bolt. There was something grounded about the way he worked, something completely opposite to the men she had known. Nathan wasn't the type to sit in boardrooms, making deals over overpriced whiskey. He wasn't the type to wear a mask of charm and strategy, speaking only when the words benefited him. He was real, and that scared her more than anything. Didn't peg you for the mechanic shop type. Sophia jumped at Nathan's voice. He was. Looking at her now, amused but not unkind. I needed to get out of the house, she admitted, hugging the coat around herself. And you did say I could stop by? Nathan wiped his hands on a rag, nodding toward the car. Well, welcome to my empire. She let out a soft laugh. Impressive. Nathan leaned against the workbench. You know anything about cars? She hesitated. Not really. His mouth twitched. Figured. Sophia narrowed her eyes. You say that like it's a bad thing. Not bad, he said, smirking. Just expected. She folded her arms. You know, just because I don't know how to fix a car doesn't mean I'm completely useless. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Prove it. She blinked. What? He nodded toward the car. Help me. Sophia let out a short laugh. I don't even know where to start. Nathan shrugged. Good thing I'm a decent teacher. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to say no, to step back, to keep her distance. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong here, but that was the problem, wasn't it? She had spent her whole life belonging to a world she didn't want. Maybe it was time to step into one that wasn't hers. It turned out that working on a car was a lot messier than she expected. Nathan showed her how to check the oil, how to recognize when a belt needed replacing, how to identify the distinct smell of an overheated engine. She wasn't great at any of it, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't pretending. She wasn't smiling for cameras. She wasn't making polite conversation with men twice her age who saw her as a chess piece rather than a person. She was just here. At some point, Nathan handed her a wrench. Try this. Sophia glanced at him. I have no idea what I'm doing. Nathan smirked. Yeah, I noticed. She rolled her eyes but took the wrench anyway. Her fingers fumbled with the bolt, and when she finally loosened it, a small streak of grease smeared across the back of her hand. She stared at it. She had spent her whole life untouched by mess, and yet standing here in a garage with the scent of oil and metal surrounding her, a smudge of grease on her skin, she felt more real than she ever had. She looked up at Nathan. His expression had shifted, still amused but softer, like he could see exactly what she was feeling, like he understood. After a while, Nathan set his tools down. You're not just passing through, are you? Sophia froze. The casual, easy rhythm between them vanished in an instant. Nathan leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, watching her. You don't have a destination, he continued. You don't have a plan. And something tells me you're not just some girl on a road trip. Sophia's stomach twisted. She had been careful. She had given him as little as possible, guarded every word. But Nathan wasn't stupid. She started, but stopped. She had spent her whole life lying, spinning words into pretty, careful distractions, but standing in front of Nathan Williams, under the harsh, fluorescent lights of his garage, she suddenly didn't want to lie. She just didn't know how to tell the truth. Nathan exhaled, running, a hand through his hair. Look, I'm not asking for details. Whatever you're running from, that's your business. But if you're staying here, if you're staying in my house, I need to know one thing. Sophia swallowed. What? His eyes met hers, steady. Are you in trouble? Her breath caught. Not, "Are you dangerous?" Not, "Do I need to be worried?" Just a simple, quiet question. "Are you in trouble?" Sophia wanted to tell him no, but the truth sat heavy on her tongue. "I don't know," she whispered. Nathan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, just that. No pressing, no demands, no threats." Sophia exhaled, tension she hadn't, realized she was carrying loosening just a little. Maybe, just maybe, she had met the one person who wouldn't push her away the moment he learned the truth. The wind had calmed by the time they left the garage, but the cold remained sharp, biting at Sophia's exposed skin as she stepped outside. The late afternoon sky was a deep shade of grey, the sun barely peeking through the thick winter clouds. Nathan locked up behind them, shoving his keys into his jacket pocket. He didn't say much as they walked back toward the truck, but Sophia could feel the weight of unspoken words between them. "Are you in trouble?" His question still lingered in her mind, circling like a restless bird, and her answer, "I don't know," had been the most honest thing she had said in a long time. She climbed into the passenger seat, the warmth from the truck's heater a welcome relief against the cold. Nathan started the engine, pulling out onto the road, and for the first few minutes they drove in silence. Finally, he spoke. "You did good today." Sophia blinked, turning toward him. "What?" Nathan kept his eyes on the road, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "At the shop. You didn't break anything." She let out a breath of laughter. "That's a pretty low bar." "Hey, gotta start somewhere," he teased, giving her a sideways glance. Sophia shook her head, but the warmth in his voice settled something inside her, something she hadn't realized had been unsettled. She had felt useful today, not just a name on a guest list, not just a socialite meant to be admired but never truly known. She had gotten her hands dirty. She had learned something, and strangely enough, she wanted to learn more. The truck rumbled to a stop in Nathan's driveway, the porch light casting a soft glow over the snow-covered ground. Sophia followed him inside, shrugging off her coat as she stepped into the familiar warmth of the cabin. The fire in the fireplace had burned low, its embers glowing faintly beneath the wood. Nathan walked over and grabbed a few logs from the stack, tossing them into the hearth. Sophia hesitated before stepping forward. "Can I—" Nathan paused. Glancing up at her, she motioned toward the firewood. "Can I help?" He didn't say anything for a second, just looked at her, then he nodded. "Sure." She crouched beside him, reaching for a log. Her fingers brushed against his for just a second, a fleeting, unexpected touch that sent a ripple of warmth through her even stronger than the fire. Nathan didn't react, or if he did, he didn't show it. They worked in quiet synchronicity, placing the logs carefully, arranging them so the fire would catch and burn evenly. When Nathan finally struck a match and touched it to the kindling, flames flickered to life, crackling and popping as they climbed the dry wood. Sophia sat back on her heels, watching as the fire grew stronger, brighter. Nathan leaned against the stone hearth, rubbing his hands together to chase away the lingering cold. After a moment, he spoke. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said, voice quiet, thoughtful. "But I think you need to tell someone." Sophia's fingers curled against her knee. He was right. She had spent so long holding everything in, wearing masks, pretending everything was fine while the walls of her life closed in around her. She had run. But running wasn't the same as letting go. She looked up at Nathan, his face half lit by the firelight, his expression unreadable but patient. He wasn't pressing. He wasn't demanding answers. He was just there. And for some reason, that made her want to tell him. She exhaled slowly. "My father," she started, the words feeling foreign in her mouth, "is one of the wealthiest men in the country." Nathan didn't flinch, didn't interrupt. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to keep going. "My life has never been mine," she admitted, the weight of the confession pressing against her chest. "Every choice, every decision, it was always made for me, where I went to school, who I spoke to, what I wore, even who I was supposed to marry. Nathan's jaw tightened slightly, but he stayed silent, letting her speak. I was supposed to get engaged last night, she whispered. To a man I barely know. A business deal disguised as a marriage. I didn't have a choice. She swallowed, hard, her throat thick with emotion she hadn't let herself feel until now. So I left, she said, her voice barely above a breath. I got in my car, and I just drove. The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the room for a long moment. Finally Nathan spoke. You don't plan on going back, do you? Sophia met his gaze, steady and certain. No. Nathan nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. You afraid they'll come looking for you? He asked. Sophia hesitated. She wanted to say no, that she wasn't important enough for her father to send anyone after her, that she was just another chess piece in his grand strategy, and once she was gone, he would simply find another move to make, but deep down, she wasn't so sure. I don't know, she admitted. Nathan exhaled, running, a hand through his hair. All right, that was it. No lecture, no telling her she was crazy, no saying she should go back, just all right. She blinked at him. That's all you're going to say? Nathan shrugged. It's your life. You get to decide what to do with it. Her chest tightened. No one had ever said that to her before. She had spent her whole life being told who she was supposed to be, what she was supposed to do. Even now, she had half expected Nathan to say something about duty, responsibility, family obligations, but instead, he just let her be. She didn't know what to do with that. Nathan stood, stretching his arms over his head. I'm gonna turn. In long day tomorrow. Sophia nodded slowly, watching as he grabbed his jacket and headed toward his bedroom. He paused at the door, glancing back at her. You're safe here, Emma. The way he said it, simple, certain, made something in her chest ache. She nodded. Good night, Nathan. He nodded back. Night. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Sophia alone with the fire, its warmth flickering across the walls. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt something she couldn't quite name, because for the first time since she had left everything behind, she didn't feel like she was running anymore. She felt like she was standing still, and that terrified her more than anything. Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and something faintly sweet, cinnamon maybe. For a moment she forgot where she was. Her body was warm, wrapped in the thick quilt Nathan had given her, the faint golden light of morning seeping through the window. The quiet stillness of the cabin surrounded her, so different from the controlled chaos of her old life. There was no knock on her door, no assistant waiting outside with a schedule in hand, no forced conversations, no suffocating expectations, just peace. And then she remembered last night. She had told him, not everything, but more than she had told anyone in her life. And he hadn't run, he hadn't judged. Nathan had simply listened, let her be. And that, more than anything, was what made him dangerous, because if she let herself believe this was real, that she could stay here, that she could belong here, it would hurt that much more when she had to leave. She found Nathan in the kitchen, standing over the stove, flipping what looked like French toast. She hesitated in the doorway, watching him move with the same ease and confidence he had in the garage. There was something unshakable about him, something steady and constant, something she had never had before. Morning, he said without turning around. Sophia cleared her throat. Morning. Hope you like French toast, he said, plating a golden brown slice. I'm a simple man. Don't do fancy breakfasts. She let out a small laugh. I think I can manage. Nathan smirked, setting the plate in front of her as she sat down at the small kitchen table. She took a bite, and to her absolute shock it was amazing. Warm, slightly crisp on the outside, soft on the inside, with just the right amount of cinnamon and syrup. She had eaten at the finest restaurants in the world, with Michelin-starred chefs preparing meals designed to be photographed more than enjoyed. But somehow, this was better. "All right?" Nathan asked, watching her reaction. She swallowed. "It's perfect." His lips quirked in quiet amusement. "Not what you're used to." She shook her head, smiling softly. "Not even close." They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled, but there was something beneath it, something unspoken. Finally, Nathan leaned back in his chair, wrapping his hands around his coffee mug. "So, what now?" Sophia stilled. "What do you mean?" He studied her, not accusing, not demanding, just waiting. "You told me last night you're not going back," he said, "and I believe you." He paused. "But what happens now, Sophia?" She flinched at the sound of her real name. She had spent days pretending to be someone else, letting the name Emma settle on her like a disguise. Hearing him say her real name, so easily, so casually, made something inside her twist. She had no answer for him. She had run with no plan, no destination. She had never expected to end up here. Nathan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "I'm not trying to push you," he said finally, "but if you're staying in my house, I need to know where your head's at." Sophia stared down at her plate, the weight of reality settling in. Could she stay here? Did she even belong here? Before she could answer, a loud knock at the door shattered the moment. Nathan's brow furrowed as he stood. "No one ever comes by this early." Sophia's stomach dropped. A sharp, irrational fear gripped her, a voice in her head screaming that this was it. They had found her. She shot to her feet before Nathan could reach the door. "Wait." Nathan turned back, confused. "What?" Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Don't open it." His expression darkened. "Sophia, who the hell are you afraid of?" The knock came again, louder this time, and then a voice. "Nathan, you in there?" Sophia exhaled sharply, her knees going weak with relief. It wasn't her father's men. It wasn't Ethan. It was a woman's voice. Nathan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Relax. It's just Harper." Sophia blinked. "Who?" Nathan walked past her and opened the door. A woman stood on the porch, bundled in a heavy winter coat, her dark brown hair pulled into a loose braid over her shoulder. She was around Nathan's age, maybe a little younger, with sharp, blue eyes that flickered curiously over Sophia the moment the door swung open. "Well, well," she said, stepping inside. "Didn't expect company." Nathan closed the door behind her. "Harper, this is Emma." He hesitated, then glanced at Sophia. "Emma, this is Harper." Sophia forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you." Harper didn't look convinced. She glanced between them, something knowing in her expression. "So you're the mystery woman I've been hearing about?" Sophia's stomach flipped. "Hearing about?" Nathan shot Harper a warning look, but she ignored him. "Small town," she said, shrugging off her coat. "People talk. And when Nathan Williams suddenly starts bringing a woman around, people get curious." Sophia's cheeks burned. This was exactly what she didn't want. Attention. Questions. Nathan sighed. "Ignore her. She likes to pry." Harper smirked. "I'm nosy. It's a gift." Sophia forced a laugh, but she could feel Harper's eyes still studying her, assessing. "Relax, city girl," Harper said finally, sitting down at the table and stealing a piece of toast from Nathan's plate. "I'm not here to interrogate you." Sophia exhaled slowly. She didn't believe that. Nathan grabbed his coffee and leaned against the counter. "So what do you want?" Harper chewed thoughtfully, then shrugged. "Came by to see if you'd help me move some stock at the shop later." "Can it wait till tomorrow?" Harper raised an eyebrow. "Seriously, what, you busy entertaining?" Nathan shot her a shut-up look. Harper just grinned, but then her gaze softened slightly as she looked back at Sophia. "You're safe here, you know," she said, voice quieter now. Sophia stilled. Harper leaned forward. resting her chin on her hand. "Whatever you're running from, Nathan's probably the best person you could have run into." Sophia swallowed hard. She wanted to believe that, but deep down she knew the past had a way of catching up, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could outrun hers. The sun had barely risen higher in the sky when Harper finally left, throwing one last teasing remark over her shoulder before stepping out onto the snowy path. "She likes you," Nathan said as he shut the door, his voice carrying a note of amusement. Sophia exhaled, still feeling the weight of Harper's scrutiny. "She doesn't even know me." Nathan shrugged. "Harper's good at reading people." Sophia didn't like that. She had spent her entire life perfecting the art of being unreadable, a carefully composed image, a shield against expectations and scrutiny. But here, in this quiet town, surrounded by people who actually saw her, she felt like she was coming apart at the seams. Nathan walked into the kitchen, finishing off the last of his coffee before grabbing his keys. "I need to head back to the shop." Sophia hesitated. "Do you want me to come with you?" He looked at her for a beat, then smirked. "You offering to work for me now?" She rolled her eyes. Not exactly, but the truth was she wanted something to do. She couldn't just sit in his cabin all day, waiting. For what? She wasn't sure. Nathan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "If you want to come, you're welcome to. But no pressure." Sophia nodded. "Okay." He studied her for a second, then tossed her his flannel-lined jacket. "From the coat rack. Put this on. You're gonna freeze otherwise." She caught it instinctively, the fabric still warm from the last time he had worn it, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she held onto it for just a second longer than necessary. By the time they arrived at the shop, the snow had started falling. Again, soft, quiet flakes drifting lazily through the cold air. Inside the garage, it was warm, loud, alive with movement. The radio played softly in the background, the smell of oil and metal thick in the air. Nathan rolled up his sleeves and got to work, while Sophia watched from the side, feeling out of place, yet strangely drawn to this world. After a while, he glanced over. "You gonna stand there all day, or do you want to learn something?" She crossed her arms. "I thought I already proved myself yesterday." He smirked. "That was beginner level. Today, we upgrade." Sophia hesitated, but something in Nathan's expression made her step forward. He handed her a wrench and gestured toward the open hood of an old Chevy truck. "Here, help me with this." She took the tool and moved beside him, mirroring his posture. At first, she was terrible. Her fingers were clumsy, unfamiliar with the feel of metal and grease. But Nathan was patient. He guided her hands when she hesitated, explained things in a way that made sense, and after a while, it didn't feel so foreign anymore. She was still slow. She still fumbled. But for the first time in her life, she was learning something real. She wasn't just a name in a headline. She wasn't just an accessory to someone else's life. She was doing something, and it felt good. Hours passed faster than she expected. By the time they took a break, the world outside was darker, the snowfall heavier. Nathan handed her a bottle of water and sat down on a crate beside her. "Not bad for a city girl," he said, nudging her shoulder lightly. Sophia smirked. "I'll take that as a compliment." But before she could say more, the buzz of her phone made her freeze. She hadn't checked it in days. Slowly, she pulled it from her pocket, her stomach twisting. One missed call, one voicemail, and one text message from her father, Sophia. "Enough of this nonsense. Come home now. I won't ask again." Her breath caught. Nathan, sensing the shift in her demeanor, leaned slightly closer. "You okay?" She wasn't. Her past had found her. Sophia clenched her fingers around the phone, swallowing against the sudden tightness in her chest. No, she wasn't going back. She had left for a reason. She had chosen herself. But now, staring at the words on the screen, She felt the weight of it all pressing down on her again. She stood abruptly. I need some air, Nathan frowned. But she was already moving. Sophia stepped outside, the cold hitting her skin like a slap. She pressed a hand to her chest, her breathing uneven. This wasn't happening. Her father never repeated. Himself, he never gave second warnings. If he was demanding she return, it meant he was done waiting. She knew what that meant. He would come for her, he would find her, and she wasn't ready. She didn't want to be found. But how much longer could she hide? The door creaked behind her, and she turned to see Nathan standing there watching her. You want to tell me what's going on? His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. Concern, quiet but firm. Sophia wanted to pretend it was nothing. She wanted to smile, to deflect, to act as if she wasn't falling apart. But she couldn't, not with him, so instead she whispered, He's going to come looking for me. Nathan's jaw tightened. Your father. She nodded. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, What happens when he finds you? Sophia exhaled shakily. I don't know. That was the terrifying part. Would he drag her back? Would he force her into a life she didn't want? Or worse, would he make sure she never ran again? Nathan's eyes darkened. He understood. He didn't. Press didn't tell her she was overreacting. He just let her be afraid. And then finally he said, You're not alone in this. Sophia's chest tightened, because for the first time in her life, she actually believed that. The wind howled against the garage as Sophia stood outside, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The cold was biting, but she barely felt it. Her father had found her, not physically, not yet, but he knew she was out here. And when he wanted something, he always got it. The text message on her phone felt heavier than it should have been, as if the mere presence of those words carried the full weight of her past, the expectations, the control, the inescapable force of a man who had shaped her entire life. She had run away. She had thought she could disappear into a world that didn't belong to him. But now, standing in the cold outside Nathan's garage, she realized she had only been delaying the inevitable. Nathan leaned against the doorway, his eyes locked on her. She knew he wouldn't push. He never did. He gave her space, let her come to things on her own. But she could feel the quiet intensity in his gaze, the unspoken question between them. What now? She turned to him, her fingers tightening around her phone. I should leave. Nathan's jaw tightened. Why? She let out a shaky breath. Because I can't drag you into this. If he sends people after me, I can handle myself. His voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. Sophia shook her head. Nathan, you don't understand. He's powerful. He has resources, people who will do whatever he tells them to. If he wants me back, he'll find a way to make it happen. Nathan's eyes darkened. And if you don't want to go back? She exhaled sharply. I don't. But wanting something and getting it are two different things. For a long moment, Nathan just stared at her. Then quietly but firmly he said, Then we make sure he doesn't take you back. Sophia blinked. We? Nathan's expression didn't waver. Yeah, we. The words hit her harder than they should have, because for the first time in her life, someone wasn't telling her what to do. Someone was standing beside her. By the time they got back to Nathan's cabin, the storm outside had intensified. Snow fell heavier, the wind picking up speed, rattling against the windows. Nathan tossed his keys onto the table, running a hand through his hair. I need to make some calls. Sophia frowned. Calls? Harper. He grabbed his phone. She knows people. If someone's looking for you, she might hear about it before they even get close. Sophia hesitated. Are you sure we can trust her? Nathan met her gaze. Harper's nosy, but she's not the kind of person to turn someone in. If she He says she's got your back. She means it. That was another thing she wasn't used to. People meaning what they said. Nathan stepped outside to make the call, and Sophia paced the small living room, her mind racing. How had this happened so fast? Just days ago, she had been sitting at an engagement party, trapped in a life she didn't want. Now, she was hiding in a mechanic's cabin in the middle of nowhere, trying to figure out how to stay free. Nathan came back inside a few minutes. Later, his expression unreadable. "What did she say?" Sophia asked. Nathan exhaled. "She's heard whispers. A couple of guys came through town asking questions. They were looking for a woman traveling alone." Sophia's heart dropped. "They're here," she whispered. "Not yet," Nathan reassured her, "but they're close." A sharp chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Her father wasn't waiting anymore. He was coming. Nathan pulled out a chair at the kitchen table and motioned for her to sit. "We need to figure this out," he said. "You have two choices." Sophia sat down, her pulse still racing. "Okay. One," Nathan said, leaning forward. "We put you on the next bus out of here. No trail, no way for them to follow you." Sophia swallowed hard. That was the smartest option, but the thought of leaving, of walking away from everything she had found here, made her stomach twist. She wasn't ready to disappear again. She wasn't ready to leave him. She clenched her hands together. "What's the other option?" Nathan's eyes were steady. "You stay, and we make sure they don't find you." Sophia stared at him. "How?" Nathan exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "Harper has connections, people who can throw them off your trail. We can change your look, get rid of your car, make it harder for them to track you, but if you stay, you have to be ready for the possibility that they'll figure it out." Sophia felt the weight of the decision pressing against her. She had spent her whole life being told what to do, and now, for the first time, it was her choice. She could run, start over somewhere else, or she could stay and fight. She took a deep breath, then another, and finally she looked up at Nathan. "I'm staying." Nathan nodded once. "All right. No arguments. No trying to change her mind. Just acceptance." Sophia had never realized how much she needed that. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in the small guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside. They were coming for her, and yet, despite the fear curling in her chest, she wasn't alone. After a while she got up, wrapping Nathan's flannel around her shoulders, and stepped quietly into the living room. Nathan was there, sitting on the couch, staring into the dying fire, his expression unreadable. She hesitated before stepping closer. "You should get some rest." Nathan looked up at her, something flickering in his gaze. "You should too," she sighed, rubbing her arms. "I can't." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, me neither." For a moment they just sat there. No words, no expectations. Just two people caught in the middle of something neither of them had planned for. And then quietly, cautiously, Sophia reached out and took his hand. Nathan didn't move, didn't pull away. His fingers curled around hers, steady and warm, anchoring her in a way nothing else had. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if she was making the right choice. But for tonight, this was enough. Nathan gave her hand a small squeeze, then whispered, "We'll figure this out, Sophia." And for the first time in a long time, she believed him. Sophia barely slept. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic howl of the wind outside. Her father's men were close. The realization gnawed at her, settling like ice in her veins. For the first time since she left, her escape didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like she was standing on a fragile bridge, one step away from it all crumbling beneath her. And yet, she wasn't alone. Nathan's words from earlier echoed in her mind. "We'll figure this out." She had spent her whole life expecting to fight battles on her own, knowing that no one would stand beside her when things got difficult. But now, Nathan was different. He wasn't letting her go. and that scared her more than anything. By the time dawn broke, the storm had settled, leaving a thick layer of snow coating everything outside. Nathan was already awake when she stepped into the kitchen. He stood by the window, his jaw tight, his coffee untouched on the counter. Sophia swallowed. She knew that look. "They're here, aren't they?" she asked quietly. Nathan nodded once, his blue eyes dark and unreadable. "They pulled into town early this morning," he said. "Harper called. She saw them talking to a few locals, asking questions." Sophia's stomach clenched. "Do they know where I am?" "Not yet," Nathan said, but the way he said it made it clear. It was only a matter of time. She exhaled, slowly, trying to steady herself. Nathan turned to her then, his expression firm. "You still want to fight this?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes," something flickered in his gaze. Approval, maybe. "Then we do this right," he said. "We don't let them force you into anything, and we make sure they leave empty-handed." His confidence was unwavering, and for a moment it was enough to make her believe they could win this. It happened just after noon. A sleek black SUV pulled into the driveway, the kind Sophia recognized all too well. Her father's men never traveled. Lightly, Nathan stood beside her in the living room, watching through the window. His arms were crossed over his chest, his expression unreadable, but Sophia could feel the tension rolling off of him. "Stay here," he said, his voice low. "No," Sophia said immediately. Nathan turned to her, his eyes sharp. "Sophia, I'm not hiding," she interrupted. "Not anymore." Nathan studied her for a long moment, then exhaled sharply. "All right." Together, they stepped outside. The cold hit her immediately, the air crisp, sharp against her skin. Two men got out of the SUV, both dressed in dark coats, their movements precise and deliberate. They weren't here to talk, they were here to bring her home, whether she wanted to go or not. One of them stepped forward, his sharp eyes locking onto hers. "Sophia," he said, "not Emma, not the name she had chosen, but the name she had tried to leave behind." She squared her shoulders, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I'm not going with you." The man's lips curled slightly, as if he had been expecting that answer. "I don't think you understand, Miss Lancaster. Your father—" "I don't care what my father wants," she cut in. The man blinked, caught off guard by her interruption. She had never spoken like this before, at least not to people who worked for her father. She had always played the role, always followed the rules, but she wasn't that girl anymore. "You're going to leave," she said, voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. "And you're going to tell my father that I'm not. You're coming back." The man exhaled through his nose, as if she were a child throwing a tantrum. "This isn't a request." Nathan stepped forward then, his presence solid and unmoving beside her. "She's not going anywhere," he said, his voice calm but laced with warning. The second man, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "And who the hell are you?" Nathan didn't flinch. "The man who's telling you to get the hell off my land." The first man's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected resistance. They were used to people obeying, used to getting their way simply because of who they worked for. Nathan, he wasn't impressed. "You have no authority here," Nathan continued. "She's an adult. She made a choice. You try to force her into that car, and you're trespassing. That won't end well for you." Sophia felt the shift in the air, a battle of wills. The men weren't used to being challenged. And Nathan? He wasn't backing down. Silence stretched between them, and then finally the first man exhaled. "I hope you know what you're doing, Miss Lancaster," he said, his tone almost pitying. Then without another word he turned and walked back. "To the SUV." The second man hesitated, throwing Nathan a sharp look before following. They got into the car, the engine rumbling to life. The tires crunched against the snow as they backed out of the driveway, disappearing down the road. Sophia let out a shaky breath, barely realizing she had been holding it. Nathan turned to her. "You okay?" She swallowed, still staring at the empty road. "I think so." Nathan studied her carefully. "They're not done," he said finally. "They'll try again." Sophia nodded. She knew that. Her father didn't accept defeat. But today she had won, and for now that was enough. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. She sat in front of the fireplace, her knees pulled to her chest, watching the flames dance. Nathan's voice cut through the quiet. "Can't sleep?" She turned slightly to see him standing near the doorway, his silhouette illuminated by the fire's glow. She shook her head. "Too much in my head." Nathan walked over, sinking onto the couch beside her. He didn't speak, didn't push, and maybe that was why she finally whispered, "I thought I'd feel different." Nathan glanced at her. "How so?" Sophia exhaled. "I stood up to them. For the first time in my life I said no." She paused. "But I still feel like I'm waiting for something, like this isn't over." Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then softly, he said, "That's because it's not." Sophia met his gaze. "So what do I do now?" Nathan's expression was steady. "You decide what happens next." And that was the difference. For the first time, she had a choice. Sophia looked back at the fire, her thoughts a tangled mess of uncertainty and hope. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to find out. The morning after the confrontation, the world felt different. The sky was clearer, the snowfall lighter. The air held a crisp stillness, as if waiting for something to change. Sophia stood on the front porch of Nathan's cabin, her arms wrapped around herself. She had done it. She had stood her ground, refused to be dragged back into a life that wasn't hers. And yet, she didn't feel like the battle was over. Nathan stepped out beside her, his coffee steaming in the cold air. He hadn't left her side since yesterday. "They'll come back," she murmured. Nathan didn't look at her. "Yeah." Sophia exhaled, watching her breath curl into the sky. She wasn't afraid anymore. But she wasn't naive either. She turned to him, the one person who had stood beside her through it all. "What if running isn't the answer?" Nathan finally met her gaze. Something flickered there, something unreadable. "What are you saying?" She swallowed. "Maybe it's time I stop hiding and start fighting." Inside, they sat at the kitchen table, the same place where everything had started to shift between them. Sophia traced the rim of her coffee mug, her thoughts racing ahead of her. "I can't just keep running," she said. "If I disappear again, my father will always be looking over my shoulder. I'll never be free." Nathan leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, a man who had opened his home to her without asking for anything in return. A man who had stood between her and the people who had controlled her entire life. A man she had come to trust more than anyone. "I need to go back," she said. Nathan's jaw tensed. "Back?" "Not to him," she clarified quickly, "but I need to face him on my terms. If I don't, he'll never stop. He'll always believe he can pull me back whenever he wants." Nathan studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, quietly, he asked, "Are you ready for that?" Sophia took a deep breath. "I don't know. But you're gonna do it anyway." She nodded, a beat of silence. Then Nathan sighed, rubbing his jaw. "Then I'm coming with you." Sophia's heart stumbled. "Nathan, you don't have to—" "I know," he said, "but I'm not letting you do this alone." She swallowed past the sudden tightness in her throat. For the first time in her life, someone wasn't making choices for her. Someone was choosing to stand beside her, and that made all the difference. Sophia had never returned to her father's estate without feeling like a prisoner. But today, as she and Nathan walked through the towering iron gates, she wasn't the same woman who had left. The house was exactly as she remembered. Grand, imposing, a fortress built on control and wealth. But for the first time, it didn't intimidate her. She found her father in his office, seated behind the massive mahogany desk that had been his throne for decades. He looked up when she entered, his sharp eyes narrowing. "I see you, finally. Oh, came to your senses," he said smoothly. "I assume you're ready to stop this foolish rebellion." Sophia didn't flinch. "No, I came to tell you that I'm done." Her father's smile barely wavered. "You don't walk away from this family, Sophia." She met his gaze head-on. "Watch me." His expression darkened. "You don't understand." "No," she cut in, her voice stronger than she thought possible. "You don't understand. I'm not your pawn. I never was. You've spent your whole life controlling me, shaping me into the daughter you wanted, but you don't own me, and you never will." For the first time in her life, her father looked genuinely caught off guard. Nathan stepped beside her, solid and unwavering. "She's not alone in this," he said quietly. Her father's gaze flicked to him, cold and assessing. "And who exactly are you?" Nathan didn't blink. "The man who's standing beside her, and I'm not going anywhere." A tense silence filled the room. Sophia's father exhaled, his face unreadable. Then, with a small smirk, he leaned back in his chair. "So that's how it is," she lifted her chin. "That's how it is." Her father studied her for a long moment before finally nodding. "Then I suppose there's nothing left to say." Sophia felt it in her bones. It was over. No more threats, no more expectations. She was free. They didn't speak much on the way back. Sophia sat in the truck, staring out at the road ahead. She had expected to feel relief, but what she felt instead was light, like the weight she had been carrying her entire life had finally lifted. Nathan glanced at her. "You okay?" She turned to him, really smiling for the first time in a long time. "I think so." A pause. Then Nathan smirked. "Good, because I need my flannel back." Sophia laughed, a real, genuine laugh. For the first time, her future wasn't planned out for her. It was hers to create, and as she looked at Nathan, she realized she didn't want to do it alone. The road stretched ahead, open and endless, and for the first time, Sophia was ready to see where it led. Wow, what a journey! Sophia's fight for freedom, Nathan's quiet strength, and the battle between love and destiny. This story had it all. But now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, if it kept you on the edge of your seat, made you feel something, or even just gave you a moment of escape, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey. See you in the next one.